Richard Haass is the head of the Council of Foreign Relations. He is in our New York studio this morning. Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Harry.
You just heard the Admiral. He says we have the right strategy, we have the right resources in Afghanistan right now. Recently, you wrote in Newsweek that it's time to scale down our ambitions in Afghanistan. Why?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's really worth it. I don't think Afghanistan warrants the scale of investment the United States is making. The CIA director, Leon Panetta, as you know, Harry, estimates there's only 50 to 100 al-Qaeda people left in the country. So the scale of what we're doing is way too much. Also, I don't really think it's going to work. To try to do a nation-building or state-building effort in a place like Afghanistan, which has no tradition of a strong central government, which is divided along all sorts of ethnic and tribal and geographic lines. Also, you've got a sanctuary in neighboring Pakistan. I simply don't think the sort of strategy we're doing can succeed, and instead I would scale back. To be clear, not leave, not to withdraw, but I do think the United States ought to scale back dramatically to do something much more along the lines of counterterrorism, more akin to the sort of limited actions we're doing in places like Somalia and Yemen, where we use drones, we use cruise missiles, we use covert operatives, we use special forces. We go after the terrorists, but we do not try to remake a society.
Because we look at what's happened at al-Qaeda, and as the Admiral just said, a lot of it has moved to Pakistan, some of it has moved to Yemen, Somalia, places like that. Does al-Qaeda even require a home base?
It certainly doesn't require one in Afghanistan. There's nothing special or unique about Afghan real estate. Al-Qaeda requires some places to work out of, but it could also be out of New Jersey or out of Michigan. Al-Qaeda is not an organization in the sense of a tight-knit IBM of terror. It's much more cellular, it's diffuse, it needs access to money, access to the internet, it needs to train and equip people, but it's very diffuse, so there's nothing special about any single country. It doesn't really need a single base.
Is the deck stacked against the United States in Afghanistan? You don't have a good partner in Karzai. Pakistan Intelligence Service has been helping al-Qaeda, helps the Taliban. Is there just too many variables there that don't help paint a better picture for a future in Afghanistan, especially with an American partnership?
The deck is stacked if we try to accomplish great things. We can't succeed. But sometimes in foreign policy, you've got to think not about what it is you want to create. You've got to be more modest and think about what it is you want to prevent. And what it is we ought to be trying to prevent is that Afghanistan again become a place where terrorists operate freely. We also don't want Afghanistan to become a base to destabilize Pakistan. What I'm arguing is that we can do those things with a far more modest American force presence.
One of the other factors in this, because there's this drawdown target date next summer, some of it is incumbent upon training the police and army in Afghanistan, a process that took years in Iraq and is arguably much more difficult in Afghanistan. Is it realistic to even think about doing a troop drawdown next summer?
I think it's realistic. Indeed, I think it's wise to do a troop drawdown, but we shouldn't bank on creating a strong central police or military. I would think much more about arming the locals, various tribesmen, and so forth. Again, that's the nature of Afghan territory, Afghan society. I'd also think about talking directly to the Taliban. I don't assume, and I don't understand why the administration assumes, that if elements of the Taliban regain footholds in Afghanistan, as they surely will, why do we assume they are necessarily going to make the same decision they made last time and bring back al-Qaeda? It's quite possible that many of the Taliban can be persuaded not to get back into bed with al-Qaeda. That ought to be something we explore.
But the part of that partnering up again with the Taliban brings the fear of the kind of ruthless rule that pervaded there for the longest time. Everyone saw the picture of Time magazine this week of a woman whose ears and nose were cut off. We can't prevent that in the long term in the future, but if we're not there in a significant way, doesn't that leave that vacuum for the Taliban to move back in again?
Well, some of that, unfortunately, is going to happen in those areas that the Taliban once again prevail in. I don't like it. On the other hand, I don't think, Harry, we can ask 100,000 American men and women in uniform to essentially put their lives on the line to try to remake the politics and society of Afghanistan. I don't sit here and say that happily, but I think we've got to be realistic about what it is we use our military for and what it is we ask people to put their lives on the line for.
Richard Haass from the Council on Foreign Relations, we thank you so much for coming in. on this Sunday morning. Do appreciate it.